Hey, everybody, this is Steve Tarter, another edition of Tartar Sauce here in the, I like to say the palatial Journal-Star in Peoria.
I like it.
But I don't know if that's true or not. We'll just say it's Friday in Peoria, and with me, we've got some great guests, good voices, too, so this will be great. But you're also on Facebook, so, we got you on TV as well, whatever that is.
Yep.
Jason Parkinson, the CEO of ONEFIRE, and Mark Hammer, the marketing director for ONEFIRE. And Jason, I'll let you tell us, what is ONEFIRE?
Yeah, so we're really a digital partner for companies of all sizes. We work with some great big companies all the way down to some small companies, and we help them implement technology into their business that helps them grow better. So usually that ends up in the marketing and sales kind of side of businesses, CRM software and some sales enablement strategy and that type of work. But we've done work on the training side for companies as well. So,
and I remember you guys starting off in the Peoria Next Innovation Center, and now you've moved downtown to the warehouse district.
Yeah.
Moved out of the incubator.
We graduated from the incubator.
Born and grew, and
it was so funny when we left Peoria Next. They actually got us a cake and had a little celebration that we made it, right. We made it and graduated.
It wasn't.
Out.
Whoa, we finally got rid of those guys. No, it wasn't.
Could have been that too.
Privately, it might have been. But yeah.
And Mark, where are you from, Mark?
So originally, I'm from Evanston, Illinois, up by Chicago, and then I went to school here in Peoria to Bradley.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were saying before we went on the air, I like to say old radio terms like went on the air.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're ever off the air anymore. But
that's true.
You work remotely from ONEFIRE, so you're a good example of the modern workplace, I guess.
Yeah, remote work takes a lot of intrinsic motivation. There's nobody looking over your shoulder, and so you really need to wake up every day and decide, here's what I'm going to
self-motivated.
accomplish. Yeah, and that I mean, there are good days and bad days, but more good than bad, and that is, I didn't know that it would work out that way, but it really has.
So you grew up in Evanston?
I grew up in Evanston, then Skokie, then Arlington Heights.
So,
and
you're living in St. Louis, so I'm trying to put this together. What, you used to be a Cub fan and now you're a Cardinal fan? Or what?
No.
I'm still a Cub fan.
I really enjoy needling the Cardinals. So I'll wear Cubs gear to Busch Stadium.
All right. We had to clear that up because before we talk about podcasts, we had to know your allegiances.
I enjoy antagonizing.
Okay.
What's been funny about Mark is, so Mark and I have worked together for a long time, and I have this desire to keep the good people that I work with me regardless of where I'm working, right? It's kind of bring people along. And
it's smart.
Yeah, so when I worked in radio, hired Mark there, and just incredibly talented, came out of Bradley's, was it the journalism program?
Yeah,
journalism. What is that? We'll have to explore that sometime.
Yeah,
a lost art.
Yeah. So essentially, hired Mark to come and work in radio, and then Mark moved with Town Square to New York and worked in Binghamton, New York, and then started doing some freelance work for us at ONEFIRE when he was in New York. And then as soon as there was an opportunity for him to come and join us full time, we did that. And Mark's lived in New York working for us, in Chicago working for us, in St. Louis, then back to Chicago,
Carbondale for a while,
just got married a couple months ago, and so now he's settling in St. Louis.
I was just about to say you're kind of a rolling stone. But,
I know for a while.
Now you're gathering some moss.
Now I have a mortgage that says that I'm staying put. So.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Now you guys are, we're on a podcast here, and we enjoy doing these at the Journal-Star. But you're setting off, and both of you have background in radio. You're about to, I'll let you tell us, you're doing podcasts, a whole series of them coming up from ONEFIRE.
Yeah, so at ONEFIRE, we really have this desire. The reason that, that I got into this business of helping other businesses is because it's neat to watch a small business grow, and it's neat to watch them implement new technology. But I know that it's kind of a pain point for a lot of business owners, a lot of marketing and sales folks, because there's so many different options and avenues for technology now. It's confusing to stay ahead of all of it. Yeah. And at ONEFIRE, that's our business. That's what we do.
Right.
And so we really set out, and Mark does 95 to 100% of the research and writing for all of our blog content that we publish at ONEFIRE. And we said we really have an opportunity here to put together some type of avenue for people to start to learn more about how technology can help their business grow. And so that's where we sat down and said, why don't we launch a podcast? We're not going to be gutsy enough to do it on Facebook, like what we're doing here. However, it is a podcast that every Tuesday a new episode is released, and we're covering all kinds of topics to help businesses
Give
grow.
us an example or two of what you've done.
Yeah, so the podcast is called Grow Up, and we've covered everything from
Now, do you mean that like grow up?
Yeah.
Or do you mean grow up?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. And
A little bit of both,
I think back
honestly.
to my toddler running around at home when I think I came up with the name Grow Up. But one of the episodes that we did was all about artificial intelligence and how it's influencing Google now. So you used to be able to just, market your business online with keywords, and it was all about, do I have the right keywords? And now keywords don't matter as much. Google's using something called Rank Brain, and they're essentially using artificial intelligence to read the content on your website and to understand the context of the person that is searching and measure their intent and then match up that content. So your search results now and the way that you get into the #1 spot on Google is very different than it was just a couple years ago.
Wow.
So, we feel like information like that's important for small businesses to start to understand so that they can be a competitive force with some of the big players too.
What do you find? I mean, I imagine it's a mixed bag, but when you talk about technology, obviously it depends on what that company is doing.
Sure.
How much they interact. But are there any like common misconceptions? I mean, you mentioned keywords and getting ranking on Google. What are there some other misconceptions about the technology that you're going to address in these podcasts?
Yeah, I think a big point of the podcast is helping businesses understand that many of these technologies are accessible even if they don't seem like it.
Okay.
So virtual reality and augmented reality, the barrier for entry to those kinds of things just isn't as high as it might seem on the surface.
So grow up is a kind of a catchphrase for, understand that it's, hey, you can get in on this.
Right.
It's not an exclusive club. I mean, you guys are going to help people, obviously.
Right.
You're doing
Of
it with these
course.
podcasts.
Yeah.
Right. And you think about business growth and just growing better, and it's always about, everybody's always focused on growing up and to the right on their plan.
Right.
And there's ways to do that aren't just revenue drivers either. Like a lot of businesses are all focused on the dollar. But it's also about growing better in terms of how do you grow and help the community? How do you grow and help other people around you? How do you provide growth into your employees? And so we decided that this podcast is kind of a way for us at ONEFIRE to help. We're doing this not because it's going to turn into a bunch of money for us at ONEFIRE. We're doing this because it's a growth opportunity for us to grow in helping others.
Well, it gets your name out.
It does. There's a branding aspect to it, for sure.
And I think most people would relish the opportunity to learn a little more. I mean, even folks like me, which would be like dinosaur type thing, because I realize, and I'm not bragging about this, because Lord knows, people would just roll their eyes thinking, how can he survive? But you realize sometimes how things have changed. Something as simple as turning on the television set.
Oh yeah.
Because my kids reworked it, whatever, and I leave me with a remote. And I swear I've done this where I put it on and I get something, but I can't get it to move. Finally I just throw it down. I'll wait till somebody else comes in. I don't care about it. Wasn't anything on anyway. But I mean, and that's just a poor example of what used to be click, or somebody could say in your car, you just press a button and the radio station came on. Well, now we have infinite levels of opportunity.
Very true.
Where in Peoria? How do you classify Peoria as far as technology goes? Because I know, and you guys were part of this when you were at Peoria Next, in that very center that you were there.
Sure.
There seemed to be a real thrust to really push technology in Peoria. I mean, make that one of our assets, because we got medical, we got Caterpillar, we got the Ag Lab, all these things going on.
Sure.
How do you classify it?
Yeah,
when you've been here.
Yeah, I think that's still the case, Steve. What I really like about Peoria is a couple things. One, in Silicon Valley, the cost of living, the cost of employing people is astronomical. In Peoria, it's not. And the fact that we are geographically located within a 3-hour drive to Chicago, Indy, St. Louis, and We have an airport here that's phenomenal that you can, within one connection flight, be almost anywhere in the world
And park free.
for free,
which is really unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's really great.
And I mean, so Peoria is primed to be, a really great community for technology. And there's a lot of things going on here. The Startup Peoria community that Rand Geddes is really plugged into. And then all the work that's going on, even in, and I don't know how much you know about 5G.
I've been hearing about it.
Cellular
I'll have to wait for your
connection.
podcast on that.
Yeah, right. But 5G, like we're really working hard to try to make Peoria kind of a pilot city in Illinois for 5G. So there's just a lot of things kind of going on behind the scenes that I think a lot of consumers and a lot of business owners may not know is happening here locally too. The podcast is not specifically focused on Peoria.
Right.
We serve at ONEFIRE a large national audience of customers and prospects, but we are, with us being here in Peoria, and I'm a Canton native. Peoria has always been my big city growing up. This is our home for ONEFIRE, and where we want to, make sure we continue to pour into the technology scene that's kind of happening here too.
I don't know if you were here, if either of you guys were here, when I think we copped this idea from Chicago where, and this has been a number of years, so you may not remember this, but we had all these painted pigs all over the place.
Okay.
And businesses would adopt them.
I remember this.
And tailor them to their own. So if you were the library, the pig would be glasses, reading a book.
Right.
So on and so forth. Well, I've thought, dust that off and bring it back again. There's Mr. Originality here. But would be robots.
Oh.
Every business have a little, I mean, you guys have a robot.
We do.
You were telling me that.
Yeah.
And Mark, you play with this robot or work this robot.
Yeah, so
play
the
is probably
robot,
the wrong word.
the robot is essentially kind of an iPad mounted onto a
Segway body.
Body, right? And I'm able to remote into the office, and so it's kind of
called
fun.
a telepresence robot.
Telepresence robot.
Wow.
And it's fun. We occasionally have dogs in the office. And so
Real dogs.
It's real dogs.
They're real.
And so
Not robot ones.
it's a lot of
Corgis.
fun to show up in the robot and scare the dogs because they don't know what's going on.
yeah.
And then I'll have somebody give the dogs a treat though from the robot, and so then they recognize it as a.
So now they hang around the
friendly-
robot. Yeah.
Now they like the robot. Yeah, but you can do a lot of robots are a lot of fun.
Well, I think just without knowing much about them, I just think every day you read Wall Street Journal, whatever you're reading, the robotic movement, and it's I mean, we know they've been making cars and they've been doing that for years, but in every phase, our burgers will soon be delivered. Depending on how far you want to go with it. Do you guys play a part in that?
So I think it's not as much about the robots and it's more about the automation. So when we look at automation from a software perspective, we're looking at automating things for companies that may not have a need for robotics. So yes, we do play a part in that. Let's talk about marketing automation for a second.
Sure.
When most marketing departments within companies that we work with are small, 1 or 2 people. Maybe they've got a team of some freelancers that provide some help. And it's impossible to have one-to-one relationships with all of your prospects and leads. And that's kind of what you need to have now when you're marketing a business. And so we help put software into place that automates a lot of that. So if somebody comes to your website, and we can start understanding the types of things that they're interested in. Instead of just sending a mass newsletter out from your company once a month, you start to send very targeted, nurtured, focused campaigns to that one individual so that they get information that's more relevant to them. And then automation on the sales side is in play too. A lot of businesses and sales professionals have challenges where, they'll be talking with a lead and then maybe they'll send a pricing brochure and then the lead goes quiet. They just stop communicating back.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating for a salesperson because it's like, well, what happened?
Yeah. What I do.
So do I, how many more times do I need to call or email before they finally respond? And so we can put automation in place that essentially automate some of those processes and some tracking, so we know when somebody is looking at like a sales proposal, what pages of that proposal they're looking at, how much time they've spent on each page. And then on the automation front, being able to say, okay, this person hasn't responded to an email. I'm going to enroll them into some automation where it's going to send some emails on my behalf. And as soon as the person responds, the robot or the automation is going to stop and let me as a human pick that back up. We have a whole episode of the podcast on chatbots, which is not a robot, but it's a kind of a robot.
Yeah,
Mark,
kind of a conversational
chatbots.
Sure. Yeah, so chatbots are becoming very popular, and the reason for that is that most customers, when interacting online, just want the quickest possible answer or service.
Right.
So they just want to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible, and chatbots allow for that to happen without a human present, which is pretty great. If you're talking about staffing, you can have a chatbot take over for you during your off hours. So the office may be closed, but you're still able to service customers that need your attention right then.
How does that work? I mean, if I called up, let's say, a business, the chat box in place, you ask a question and the chat bot answers?
Yeah, so it's primarily an online thing. It's primarily like an instant messaging type feature.
Okay, gotcha.
But you can see like Facebook Messenger, a lot of businesses now are allowing people to talk with them one-on-one through Facebook Messenger. Same with the little chat widgets on websites. You've probably noticed now when you go to websites all the time, down in the bottom corner, it's, hey, how can I help you? Like asking that question. One of the things that we have in place at ONEFIRE, because we do a lot of this educational content, we get a lot of students from different universities that are on our website looking at our blog content. And sometimes they will ask questions about a topic. And so we kind of have a chat bot in place that qualifies somebody as, are they just asking us a question because they're curious, or are they do they have an intent to purchase? And so the bot may say, hey, welcome to our website. How can we help you today? And if they, depending on kind of what their question is, and using some artificial intelligence through the chat bot can either answer all of their questions or route them to a human who can kind of pick up the conversation.
Ah, that's interesting. Well, I know this is not probably the same thing, but just recently got another used car. And when you go to some of and this was a Peoria car dealer, you go to their site and you're just looking at the inventory of used cars.
Sure.
And boom, it pops up. Hey, I'm Sandy. How can I help you? Or can I help you?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, that's
very friendly.
Similar.
And your first reaction is, I'm just looking, because, I know all about this. I know nothing, I'll be, but, and then all of a sudden you say, well, what are you interested in? And they come back with something. I mean, it really does. And then I learned, as I was exploring this further, if you go back later, an hour or whatever it is, I wanted to look at that car I just saw. Now another one comes up. This is not Sandy anymore.
Yeah.
This is Gina.
Somebody else.
Oh, yeah. Hey, well, I just talked to Sandy. Now these guys are fighting over me.
Yeah.
But I didn't. If there's one person in there that has many names.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Sure.
But no, that's fascinating.
One of the things that's interesting about that scenario with a car dealership is, so you may have Sandy. Sandy may be a human. Fine. That's great. That's a job, and that's important. But what happens when you've got Sandy and she's chatting with two people, and now you've got a third person? Like, you can have Sandy, the chat bot, do almost all of the same things, right? What brings you to the website today? And if you say, oh, I'm looking for a van, the chat bot can go, okay, the word here that he's talking about is vans. So, great. Here's a link to see all of our vans. Or do you want to schedule a test drive? What time's good for you? And if you say, 5 p.m. Tuesday, or if you say, maybe 5 o'clock, next week, like, the chatbot's smart enough to understand your intent is that you're interested in,
you're serious.
In a test drive, and the time is 5 o'clock next week, and like it understands that conversational language instead of needing to ask it, in a certain way.
As we get into all this, and I guess it depends on the level of, how businesses would require this and all that. But is there a general perception of hesitancy, fear, ignorance? I mean, how do you grade what you're getting back from businesses when you lay all this on them? I mean, I suppose it depends.
it's an educational play too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of just, I think that businesses feel like there's this big barrier to do those things. And I think a lot of businesses feel like, well, I've never done that in the past. Why do I need to start now?
Right.
And if you look at how technology has shifted, I mean, the iPhone has changed everything, and the iPhone came out, 10 years ago. So you have to look 10 years in the future and say, is my business still going to be here 5 or 10 years from now? And if the answer is yes, you need to start looking at what does that look like so that you can be ahead of the curve instead of behind the curve.
Right. It's certainly tailored to a younger audience. And interestingly, in China, they use an app called WhatsApp. And basically, WhatsApp, I believe that's correct. Yep. But so what happens with that is that's where, most people in China, especially younger people, spend their time.
It's like texting.
And they chat with their friends, interact with their friends. And so businesses get in on that game with chatbots. And so while you're chatting with your friends, instead of like having to pick up a phone and call for a pizza, you can just chat the pizza place and say, hey, I'd like to order a pizza. And then, maybe 2 or 3 questions, your pie's on the way. You can do that with ordering an Uber or booking a hotel room or planning a trip. And so businesses now kind of have an obligation to meet their customers where they already are. So if customers are spending time on WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or wherever that is,
yes,
you as a business, it's in your best interest to meet them there, make things as easy as possible for them.
Is that a big sales job to get that through to people? That you need to kind of understand how things are changing?
Yeah,
I think it is.
It is. It's a little bit of an uphill battle, especially in Peoria. Okay, so we'll talk real that we're in the Midwest. This is corn country. We're in a
traditional,
very insulated traditional thing. But what's brilliant about being here is you can already see the future by looking at the coast, and that those things move inward. That happens with popular music. It happens with popular food trends. It happens with technology. And so, Mark references China. China's, much further ahead than where the United States is. But you can also look
in terms of what?
In terms of technology and their adoption,
mainstream use.
Their adoption, and even we mentioned 5G. Even the rollout of 5G there is way ahead of where we are in broadband connectivity and all of those things. But you look at the coast and you can say, here's the trends. It's going to be here in 2 to 3 years. Let's start moving forward. And it's not rocket science to identify this, but that's something that's made us successful in our business is we can look at, we don't have to invent, something new. It's let's look at what the trend is and let's work to help businesses in this area understand and adopt it, because their competitors will. Your competitors are going to do that whether you do it or not.
Yeah, and from a consumer standpoint, just to circle back to the WhatsApp thing, for example, with pizzas, as an easy example that everyone can understand, if your pizza place doesn't have the ability for me to order online and do that quickly and easily, you're off the list.
Yeah.
The difference in pizza is not great enough for me to justify picking up the phone to call you and spend any time, fighting through a conversation.
And Mark, you're 30.
I'm 30.
Yeah. I mean, it's, and you have expendable income.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I think a lot of businesses too think that this millennial crowd is the young crowd. It's really between 18 and 35, you're classified as a millennial. I'm 35. I'm right on the cusp of that. And I'm not I want to order online. I don't want the experience of, I love my bank. I hate going to the bank. I don't want to have to go to the bank. I want to do it all remote.
Sounds like a commercial about the post office. I always feel like they're always flogging the poor post office. It's I don't stand in line at the post office. Well, why not? It's not a bad place. But no, I hear what you're saying. One thing I want to, we probably don't have time to define all the subjects you guys are going to go into, but give us the elevator speech, talk, whatever it is, on 5G. Because you've mentioned that, and I'm thinking, I've heard of that, but why is that important?
5G is important for us in Peoria because right now carriers are starting to look at where are we going to roll out 5G first. And it'll make it everywhere eventually. And when I say 5G, what I'm talking about is super fast, low latency mobile internet. Like right now, the fastest thing that we have to compare it to is a fiber connection, which you have to have ran right to your house. 5G is like fiber in the air. Right. So your cell phone is going to have really fast, cat videos that you can stream to it.
Hmm.
Beyond cat videos, look at the business implications of this, right?
Oh, we don't go any further than cat videos.
I know. Well, if you look at big companies and you mentioned the Caterpillars and OSFs and like think about telehealth, okay? Like being able to do remote medicine and having that available not just in a streaming video, but maybe streaming virtual reality and augmented reality so that doctors can help patients remotely. Think about what it could do for a company like Caterpillar in the autonomous or remote driving of mining equipment. There's just so many plays there where it can be super important, and it will make it to Peoria. But the question is it going to make it here in 2025 or is it going to make it here in 2019? And if it can make it here earlier, it's going to be a big thing because our economy is going to be able to get.
What will bring it here earlier?
I think a lot of business cases for 5G. I think the community being able to get behind it and show carriers that we have ideas that can get it up and running. And really the EDC and Ross Miller at the Small Business Development Center with the Turner Center at Bradley, like they're kind of spearheading this movement of let's get, the carriers to understand that there are companies here that have ideas for 5G that it would be nice if we had it so that we could bring it to market, our ideas, when it's available.
Are we talking about AT&T, Verizon?
Those types, yeah.
Comcast
correct.
or whatever? Okay.
Correct, yep.
So 5G and we'll see. Okay.
We'll see about 5G, yeah. But I think like even looking at our uses for it, we've got a lot of ideas at ONEFIRE on how it can be used to help businesses grow, especially in the marketing space and the trade show space. If you've ever been to a trade show or a convention, the internet there is awful. And when we start looking at enabling virtual reality experiences in trade show booths, which we do a number of those types of things, it's a real pain because you have to have all of that data locally stored on a big beefy computer. 5G is going to be able to enable the streaming of that content from the internet so that you're going to be able to do that in a situation where you don't have to have it all locally. It's going to make it much easier. And so that's why it'd be really nice to partner with somebody like the Civic Center and work with ONEFIRE and let's figure this out so that as it rolls out over the next 5 or 6 years across the country, we're able to be equipped to sell our services into those other markets when it's there.
Well, we've been we're getting a little taste of the ONEFIRE
Grow Up podcast,
podcast from ONEFIRE, and with Jason and Mark.
It's on iTunes, it's on Stitcher, it's on Google Play.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, and onefire.com/growup is the website.
And you've got what? How many done? You've done 4 already?
Yeah, so we've got 4 out now, and every week there's a new episode. So Mark and I are constantly creating new content, and so we've got an episode coming out, every Tuesday.
If somebody hears 1 or 2 and thinks, "Oh, why don't you guys do such and such?" You take suggestions. Or get in touch with Mark. Or
There's a feedback form right on onefire.com/growup. And we're pretty accessible, so
we're not hard to find.
Just hit us up on WhatsApp,
or your chatbot will forward your.
Find my robot. Tell my robot what you need.
Exactly.
There we go. Well, very good. Well, hey, we want to thank you guys for coming by because I think this is great information. And hey, we podcast people have to stick together. I mean, that's what it's about.
True.
We're all about cooperating. Well, I want to thank Jason Parkinson and Mark Hammer.
Thank you
From ONEFIRE.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
You guys are rolling all kinds of stuff out here that I don't pretend to understand, but that's why we have this microphone,
and that's
so you can explain it.
Yeah, exactly. All
right, I want to thank, speaking of technology, I want to thank our friend Matt Dayoff for putting this thing together.
Thanks,
and
Matt.
Getting it out.
Thank you, Matt.
With 2 T's.
Matt with 2 T's. There we go. And hey, this is Steve Tarter, and we'll see you next time on Tartar Sauce.
Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome, guys.